Hi, everyone, and welcome. Today is a very exciting day here at Verified First because we are joined by Anuradha Arao, Senior HR and Talent Acquisition Recruiter at the EPS Corporation, to discuss keeping up with candidate demands, recruiters' new challenges. This past year, we have spent our time having important conversations with some of America's most notable leaders in the HR and TA space. Through our HR at the Table Thought Leadership webinars, we've discussed the role HR and TA has in DE&I, brand, technology, talent, culture, leadership, and so much more. Our goal is to bring relevant and timely topics to our HR and TA community that supports you in your roles. All of these topics can be accessed through our HR at the Table resources page on our website at verifiedfirst.com. With each webinar you watch, you can earn 1 SHRM and 1 HRCI credit. You also have the option to receive credit for attending today's webinar too. If these discussions are important to you, be sure to check out our HR at the Table calendar to keep up to date on topics we're talking about. We've also worked hard to bring you a comprehensive deep dive of all topics we've discussed through this series. So if you'd like to gather more insight, be sure to check out our blog page, also at verifiedfirst.com. Now, before we dive into today's discussion, I'd like to discuss some housekeeping items. As I mentioned, this webinar is available for 1 SHRM and 1 HRCI credit. For our live attendees looking to receive credit, be sure to stick around for our post-webinar survey. If you're listening to this on demand, check your email for instructions on how to redeem your credit. Don't worry, this webinar is being recorded, so you can use it as a resource, pass it along to your coworkers, or watch it whenever you want. We'd love for you to utilize the chat function during this event and send in any questions that you have for our speakers. To prepare, let's practice now. In the chat feature, let us know where you're tuning in from and if this is your first time attending an HR at the Table event. Great. With that in mind, I'd like to kick us off by officially welcoming everyone to today's discussion. Please send a friendly hello and a warm welcome in the chat to our HR at the Table host, Ben Cornett, and Anuradha Rao, Senior HR and Talent Acquisition Recruiter at the EPS Corporation. Without further ado, take it away, Ben.
Well, hello, and thanks everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of our HR at the Table. And we got to call out Zach Townsend from Verified First. Hi, Zach. You can wave at everyone. And Anu, I hope it's okay. I call you Anu. Hello. And yeah, welcome. Well, I see we got people from South Carolina, Los Angeles, Virginia City, Monterey, California. People have come back multiple times. Sometimes it's first person. Ohio, Yakima, Washington. Wow, all over the country. So thanks for joining, everyone. Hopefully today we have a great discussion. I'm really excited about the topic today, and I think you probably are as well. Keeping up with candidate demands. And I just want to really kick this off and first do a huge shout out and thank you to NeoGov, who's our sponsor for today's HR at the Table. And take just a moment and maybe we'll start with Anu and then Zach. Take a moment, introduce yourself, what you do for EPS, maybe Anu, and kind of what EPS is all about. And Zach, the same for Verified First.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity, Ben. And Zach, I look forward to talking with you in the panel. EPS Corporation, we are a defense contracting company based out of Tinton Falls in New Jersey. We are present in 4 different other locations in Fayetteville, Panama City Beach, Florida, in Pax River, Maryland, and in Eatontown, New Jersey. We support the military on their projects, right from the field services to the cybersecurity systems. So we support the Navy, and we also work with DoD, other offices of DoD like FBI, NSA, and so on. So, and I had the talent acquisition team for the company.
Awesome. Now, Anu, I'm gonna pick on you just a little bit because I know outside of government contracting with EPS, you obviously have a ton of other experience when it comes to talent acquisition. Any comments kind of on your past experience a little bit?
I have a background in engineering and computers, and I have worked I started my career as a software developer, but moved into HR and recruiting. Started my career as a recruiting screener, IT screener, but then moved up the ladder to be what I am today. In the past, I have held posts like I have done operation management for an IT company. I have also been I work for headhunting companies as account managers. So I bring in experience from telecom, finance, mostly finance. Being in New Jersey, I have worked a lot, largely with financial companies. So that's my background.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm curious, I'm sure our audience is, how do you go from software development to recruiting, and why? Why did you make that transition?
So way back in when I started my career, software development was when I came here as a software developer, the projects that I got was in different locations. Each time you move from one location to the other based on projects. So there came a point when I got tired of just traveling. So I wanted to have a 9-to-5 job. I was offered a position where I could do the screening for technical people for their projects. So I got into as a technical, what do you call it? Screener or a sourcer, so to speak, and then slowly I moved up the ladder to become a recruiter, and then I became the accounts manager, and then I became corporate recruiters. So that's the journey. It was not by choice; it just happened. But I'm happy where I am. I'm doing very well.
Yeah, that's the way it works, right? I mean, it just happens to us. Anyway, well, thanks for joining us again, Anu, and thanks for taking time out of your day. We're really excited to listen to your expertise, and I'm sure it's a little bit different than Zach's, I'm sure, and that's kind of why we brought everyone together. Zach, you want to take a moment, introduce yourself, and a little bit about what you do at VF?
Yeah, you bet. So I'm the VP of HR at Verified First. Those of you that don't know Verified First, we're a pre-employment solution company. So background checks, drug screens, verifications. We're ultimately, here to help partner with our employers to make sure that they get the most complete and accurate background picture of who they're bringing into their doors, which of course is very important. And so in my role here, I've been here for 4.5 years. Everything from onboarding to offboarding and everything that falls in between. I have a good team. We have kind of some generalists and some recruiting, some talent acquisition people ourselves, a training development professional. So that's freed me up to do a little more of the strategic stuff and kind of really dive into the culture. So I kind of came through, I guess, organically in the generalist approach, right? So I started as a HR generalist myself, then manager, director, VP. So that's kind of been my journey. I've done, all the different aspects of HR. I definitely feel like the talent acquisition, the employee relations, the people side of things is kind of my jam. So that's what I enjoy.
Yeah, I know. I love Zach because he obviously is our HR here at Verified First, and he does a really good job with his team. So Zach, I know outside of Verified First, you teach adjunct for Boise State as well. How long have you been doing that, and what's that all about? What's the why there? Why do you do that?
Yeah, so I've been doing the adjunct gig for about 4 years. So I just teach one class per semester, and it's a HR staffing and training. So half of it's kind of training development. The second half of it is, essentially the onboarding to offboarding piece in 7 or 8 weeks. I love it for a couple of reasons. First off, I still kind of giggle when people call me professor. I'm like, oh, please. But seriously, you can call me that again if you want. But I do it. It's a great training ground. It's a great recruiting ground for our organization here. Our current talent acquisition rep, our recruiter, was a student of mine a few semesters ago. But I don't necessarily do it just to recruit people to Verified First. I've helped place a ton of different people that are students at other organizations. That's kind of my, I've been a part of organizations in the past where HR wasn't really, in my view, doing things right, but they had a great impact on the organization, the culture, and so I want to help train up the next group. HR can make or break an organization, and I want to make sure people that are, essentially go through my class and go through my department, if you will, that they, they're trained the right way and have the right impact.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Zach, for sharing. Thanks, Anu, and welcome again. We're super excited for today. So I think everyone on the call, there's several hundred of you on the call. The topic of keeping up with candidate demands is hot on the minds of a lot of people. Market's super challenging. Maybe Zach, Anu, let's start by discussing today's talent market. What's going on and how's it changed within the last year? Zach, you want to take the first cut and then we'll come to Anu?
Yeah, sure. A couple of years ago, it was definitely relatively low unemployment, but even since then, it's drastically shifted into an employee market. Compensation and benefits are always a priority. I think they're definitely a focal point now, ever more so than before. But things like time off, whether or not we can work remotely, diversity and inclusion, those kinds of things are really the leading measures that we're getting asked in interviews. And what are your initiatives? And I think those, it's not just the compensation, but the work-life balance, as well as the kind of organizational values are making a really big push in our talent acquisition efforts right now.
Yeah, definitely agree. Anu, any additional insight of what's changed in the last year or two and how it's impacting
the dynamics in the workforce industry has changed a lot. Like Zach said, we are now in the employee market, and whatever the relationship between an employer, that dynamic has also changed. In the HR world, we call it what is called a parent-child relationship that was existing before is now an adult-in-adult relationship where one wants and the other wants to know what you want and what you're going to give me in return. So that's more prominent now. The talent pool is very less, so it's getting a lot more difficult to pipeline candidates and to be able to fulfill your needs. And working for the defense contracting company, it's a different challenges altogether. We have a whole lot of different challenges than the commercial market.
Sure, and maybe that is kind of my next question is, how's the talent market different in the government space than other industries? Are there some specific differences that jump out on you as you think about that?
Yeah, see, typically, the talent that we seek are primarily people who have secret clearance. And it was a lot easier, not a lot easier, it's always been a challenge to identify people with all the skill sets and with the clearance. Now it is becoming more only because even people with clearance have set up, have prioritized their needs differently. So it is not like, hey, I have a military background, I have clearance, so I'm looking to keep my clearance, I'll work for a contracting company. It has gone to, my work-life balance, where is the position, how am I going to, what is the pay, and then, if I'm able to keep my clearance, I'll take the job. So the priorities have changed.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting market, that's for sure. Zach, maybe an insight, where are recruiters struggling the most, you think, and with recruiting talent, what's maybe the three things that are the biggest challenges for recruiters?
I think for me, well, in my view, you have turnaround time, which is just huge, right? There's organizations, and you typically see it's the larger organizations, but they have a typical 60-day time, from a posting to a offer made, 60+ days is average, and just with how scarce, I guess, those qualified applicants that we're talking about are, it's a concern, right? So a lot of times the timing, how fast you can hire somebody is the competitive advantage. I think that's huge. I think also just most organizations are kind of looking at all their policies, their benefits through a different lens, and so they're, maybe organizations that in the past were not open to working remote. They're, their reasoning is being challenged and questioned by the kind of parent-child relationship that Anu was talking about. And other than that, it's just, overall wellness. I know mental wellness has taken a big hit, and luckily it's been in the forefront the last several months. But there's been a real bleed over between work life and home life, and especially if we are working from home, you're working out of your bedroom, and you feel like you're never off. And so it's just kind of making sure that the individual, the human that we employ is kind of better than when they came into our doors, and that they're okay, and that they're, they know that they have a voice and a resource if needed. So kind of three very distinct ways, but at least that's in my seat, what I see.
That's interesting. Turnaround. So I got turnaround time, benefit packages, comp, and wellness coming out of those three. Anu, any different three that you see in the government space specifically? Challenges?
No, the same challenges. The added to this is also the company culture and the employee value proposition that is that's also big these days.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting market. I know since I've been working remote, which has been the last 2 years almost, I've built a really good relationship with this chair, that's for sure, and not with so many people around the water cooler. So definitely as an employee, I feel different challenges of building relationships and a better connection with my team. As you think about, looking back these last 2 years, COVID has had an impact. And, Anu, maybe I'll start with you here. What's the greatest change that you've seen in your role as a recruiter as a result of COVID?
2019, 2020 was difficult to recruit anybody because there was a lot of fear and anxiety and confusion in the market. People like to stay put in wherever they were, and just to see how things were going to change, or things would, where it would go. Come 2021, I think this year has been more an experimental year for everyone, both employer and employee. Things, they've tried to see what would work for both the parties, and try to cut a balance. The challenge that we have had as a contracting company is that we are service oriented. So we do not have as much of flexibility that typical product company or, the other service companies, the commercial service companies could possibly have. We are, our projects are more time and, time based, and time and money, or time and material based. So we have constraints. We cannot have that kind of flexibility. And we've tried. EPS has tried to modify a lot of and do a lot of adjustment in the work flexibility. But I think we are yet to find the right avenue or right platform.
Yeah, it's really, really intriguing as you think about, as a contractor, you're kind of stuck to what the contract entails, right? And ties your arms up a little bit of a. So as a recruiter in the government space, I know we have a number of our attendees today are kind of in your same shoes. I know a little bit. What are some ways you work around that? I mean, what are some creative ways you guys at APS are thinking about reinventing that? Because it sounds like there's some change needed.
There is some changes needed wherever we can. Now, if the project that we are implementing is at the military spaces or in the offices at the client location, we do not have much to do. We cannot do. We have to go by what they dictate. However, within the organization, we have tried to bring, we've tried to work on shift basis. We've tried to make 4 days at work at the office and 1 day at work, or we have increased the number of hours, during the 4-day period, and then they take 3 days off. We've tried to accommodate as much as possible. with all the limitations that we have.
Yeah, definitely some challenges. I know, Zach, in our world, we went from a complete in-office almost to a complete remote, like overnight. At least that's what it felt like. Any like as a result of the pandemic, any great recruitment tips that you've learned that are getting people to at least take a look at us quicker than before or differently?
Yeah, I think it did happen. If it wasn't overnight, it was definitely 48 hours. So credit to our IT team. I think for us, so we have an applicant tracking system, and we added texting as a feature. And I don't know if that's just because a lot of our applicants tend to be in the younger crowd, but we seem to get a lot more responses out of the texting to schedule interviews and confirmation than when we would call and leave messages. And sometimes they call you back, sometimes they don't. So that's a big thing. For us, we've been able to open up our recruitment and our remote work. So 2 years ago, we're based in Idaho, so we had a lot of, probably 95% of our employees were here in the corporate office. And since COVID, we really kind of leaned into that, and we have employees in 30 states now. So we really just hire where the best fit is for the best candidate. And that's, I think we've gotten a lot of talent from, especially for like entry-level roles that are maybe hard to fill, even if the pay isn't necessarily the top dollar for that kind of position compared to like an Amazon, or some of the larger corporations. But they're the individuals that are leaving retail. They don't want to be in person, maybe for whatever reason. They want to work from home, or they were working from home and their employer brought them back into the office, and they didn't want that. And so again, just kind of we're able to be flexible, and I feel like we've gained on some of the competitors for that talent, because we've been able to essentially iron out our onboarding process. What equipment do you need? What position are you working? We'll ship it, and that onboarding is pretty tight. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I just want to remember all of our audience, there is a questions panel. Feel free to ask your questions. Zach, and Anu, we talked a little bit about some pandemic and impacts it's having. And all of us have read about what everyone's calling the great resignation. People are leaving their jobs at a higher pace. Not so many people are talking about a great realignment or great retirement. So people that are baby boomers are now hit that age, and maybe it's time to think about retirement, and they're retiring early, things like that. Any idea of how this whole new market, the great resignation, realignment, retirement is going to shift out over the next year? Are we going to see continuous challenges with candidates, or are we going to see things normalize? Anu, you want to go first?
Great resignation. I think whatever you said, realignment and resignation also, retirement also comes under great resignation. And I was reading a paper on great resignation, and the author, that's what he meant. He meant all three. I think that it is going to stabilize at some point. It is definitely not going to continue. It will stabilize. However, the things that what the candidate is looking for, the flexibility and the benefits that they are looking for, I think that is here to stay. So the approach, how we are going to approach and what we are going to do, the strategies in HR has to change and adapt according to the changes that is coming. So it is here to stay, and we have to make the changes. There's no second thought to it.
Yeah, I know I read something about some different sourcing methods, like looking at employee referrals as a source, and diversity groups, and social media, and some other things that maybe aren't so traditional. Zach, anything to add to the idea of the great resignation, realignment, and great retirement conversation? Do you see that happening here? I know here locally in Idaho, maybe, but overall.
Definitely. I mean, I think people are taking, they're doing a pulse check on their life. It's almost like a near-death experience. There's a shock to the system, and you kind of reassess priorities, right? And whether you were laid off and then returned to the office, or you know, just got to a point where you're like, I'm not enjoying what I'm doing. You kind of take stock of how you spend your time and what makes you happy. And it's forced a lot of us to kind of question, right? Am I happy with what I'm doing? Is this a me thing? Is it a work thing? And so, you know, people aren't necessarily as concerned about that paycheck or keeping up with the Joneses. We just want to be kind of content and live our lives. And so they've reprioritized, I think, in a lot of different ways. I've definitely seen that in my personal orbit. I've seen it at work here, and I do agree. I think the flexibility, the remote work, those kinds of things are definitely here to stay. They keep talking about the new normal. I don't know what that new normal is going to be, if we're ever going to get to that. But I definitely think employees are more comfortable voicing what they want, what they need. And I think the wise employers are the ones that are listening to that and taking that feedback and then turning that into action within their constraints. So
yeah, it's really valid. Candidates or employees in this world as well are kind of demanding everything. So there's a lot of impact to this. Let's talk a little bit about those impacts if we can. What's kind of the most off the ball? This is not on the questions, and I know you've seen some question advance, but what's one of the most off the wall demands you guys have gotten as recruiters in the recruitment world in the last 6 months? Like, it's like, that is so crazy, we're never going to do that. Anything come to mind?
Like a position, you mean?
No, like a candidate wants X. Yeah, I'll join your team, but I want this. And it's like just way out there, way weird.
Oh, currently I am working on help desk support systems for the Department of Defense Educational Unit. And I have had a number of people call and say, hey, is this a remote opportunity? I'm like, this is a help desk position. You are expected to repair and upgrade systems. No, you cannot do that remote. You need to be at the location. So yeah, it has gone to that level now.
Yeah. Anything come to mind, Zach? The strangest thing you've heard?
No, I've got, maybe not in the last 6 months, but just in general, I've gotten the, can this be a remote position? And it's a front desk receptionist greeter type thing. So, but I guess you'll never get approved if you don't ask, right? So.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's interesting because we got a question here from Amanda. And Amanda, thanks for your question. For those of you, just a reminder, you can submit questions. And pressure is she says that have you guys felt the pressure to reduce minimum qualifications because of lack of candidates? Have you guys lowered the bar, if you will, maybe?
Yeah, I think the entire, the workforce has to relook at how they write their job descriptions moving forward. When we sit with the hiring managers or I have limitations, but however, in the industry, if you were to sit with your hiring managers, things that can be knocked out right away are, is this a flexible position? Is this a remote position? Is this a hybrid position? How is a college degree very important? And then what are the most important wants on this requirement? What are the least ones? Prioritize on that. And those are the different ways of approaching and understanding what is important for that position.
Yeah, it's really another question came in that's kind of related here from Rebecca. Rebecca, thanks for your question. And she's saying, let's say remote working is not an option for the employer. Any thoughts on making, and I hope I get this question right here, on the job posting, making it so there's a premium payroll maybe for the non-remote positions? Has anyone considered that?
So essentially, like, increase in pay for an office position by 15 or 20%, right? Because they're in the office.
Yeah.
We don't have that here, but I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to, you know, the analytics. What kind of talent pool do you have locally? If it has to be somebody in person, how wide is your talent net? If you're not getting the talent, right, you gotta up it. And I think that's a creative way to do that. If you do allow like a hybrid, some people can be, you know, remote, some people can't. I'm sure there's some people that could argue that, you know, being in person is considered hazard pay, or all right, we'll pay you, we'll let you be remote, but we still have, you know, office expenses and rent, and so, you know, we have to pay that overhead, and so we, you know, not value, but maybe we pay a premium for the people that are in the office and offsetting that. So I think it's a creative option.
Yeah, I think it gets challenging. You know, we interviewed several months ago. Trying to remember who it was, but Regine, I think was her name, on the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And the idea of having this remote and in-office workplace. And you know, I don't know how we solve for this, but one of the talk tracks there was the idea of having this option of being in office and you're close to the leadership. Does that give you the same access to leadership if you're remote, right? And just some interesting things to think about as you look at your strategies in your HR and TA plans. So we have some data, LinkedIn Insights, you know, they say the largest growing priority for candidates is flexible work arrangement. And, you know, Anu, in your world, that's probably more complicated, right?
Correct.
How are you guys dealing with that? And what creative solutions are you using to help candidates see that, you know, they're valued in the office more than, or, you know, at the workplace more than at their home?
I think the candidates who are, you know, working with their clearance and know what their jobs are, do also know that, you know, it is not possible for them to have the job as remote. So there are certain positions like technical writers or, you know, proposal administrators and positions that are back office or, you know, in technical writing, or some of the positions can be made remote, and we have made it remote. While others, I believe the candidates themselves know that it is not possible. They are going to be working for the military, and there's not much choice.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. I think that upfront contract, if you will, upfront honesty of, hey, this is not remote, it makes all the world of difference. You know, Zach, in our world, we went from this pretty much all in office to all remote. What can employers do to ensure productivity? You know, I wasn't very close to that, but I think as a team at Verified First, we all remain highly productive. Any tips of what made us that way? Because I feel like that's how we came out of COVID, is remote and highly productive.
Yeah, and I think that's a good tie-in too, right? I think that's one reason why we as an organization have been able to remain remote, is because our employees did a phenomenal job going remote. The productivity was there, if not better than when it was in the office, because there were less distractions and water cooler moments and things like that. Ultimately, for me, you know, production comes down to production results. It comes down to management. This is, I mean, obviously the employer is responsible for their own results and making sure that they, you know, do the job they're hired to do. But if you don't know what your employee is doing, it shouldn't matter if they're sitting 2 feet away from you or if they're, you know, across the country. There should be daily reporting or task lists, or, you know, we use Jira. There's Basecamp. There's a ton of different, you know, project management softwares that you can use, where essentially I don't want to micromanage, but at any given point, if I need to ask, you know, hey, where are you at with this project, I can be updated on it and set clear guidelines, and then, you know, essentially just focus on the results, less about whether or not somebody's here, you know, at the start or end of the shift kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ben, just to add to this, right, I believe in 2020, 2021, the beginning of 2021 or the first half of 2021, a lot of companies did see that the production did go up, you know, and people were performing extremely well, only because, you know, now that they're working remote, it was a new, you know, a new way, a new approach. And initially it was, the teething time was there. People were trying to get adjusted with their family and the work, and then they got adjusted. They did very well. But then the later half of 2021, they're all talking about burnout and fatigue and, Zoom calls. So I think come 2022, it's going to be, okay, how are we going to deal that part of it, right? How are we going to work on, how are we going to, keep the team united? How are we going to talk about production? How are we going to do appraisal when each of them are working differently and, with different approach? So that's another challenge.
Yeah, it's interesting because that ties in directly to some of the other research from LinkedIn Insights. They say that burnout's risen 9% and happiness has fell by 3%. And in the last months of 2021. And Zach, I know you're my HR, so don't listen to what I'm not saying, but I felt that, right? It's a tremendous amount of keep the productivity up, tremendous amount of stress. I found myself walking around the block when I'm overstressed. I think it's really interesting that it's easy to get in that burnout mode, and trying to deal with that is really important. What do you think people are, what are people looking for when they're doing job searches, those that are burnt out? So, what are they looking for? I haven't done a job search in a long time, but any ideas of what they're looking for? I knew you'd like that.
Yeah. I mean, job postings are important, obviously. So if it reads like a job description and it's, 4 pages and super lengthy, I don't know, it's kind of boring, right? Typically people just kind of skip to the bottom of you might not have seen that, but I was scrolling on my phone, my imaginary phone, because a lot of them are mobile. And that's where a lot of our applications come from. But they scroll down to the requirements to see, what the benefits are and what the minimum requirements are. If you are, I don't know, as an organization, if you can display a fun culture that signals, the flexibility and the autonomy and those kinds of things. Not every company's culture page needs to have, a nap pod or anything like that to signal rest. But I do think it's important to make sure that, maybe there's some sort of video on the web page that kind of highlights the office or has testimonials from employees, just to kind of show, we're real. We actually took time to create a video or contract out a video, and it's not just the owner of the company, or it's not just HR who's presenting that. It's people that have been with us for 5 to 7 years and kind of started at the entry level position and really grown their career and personal lives here. So
yeah. How do you see Anu, in the government space? How does someone like the Navy or the Department of Defense exude culture, right? I mean, typically I would think people looking for those kind of jobs kind of know what they're getting into. Is there anything creative they're doing to tell that culture story that Zach just mentioned?
Yeah, I think to beat the burn down, a lot of people are taking jobs that is not on the same rank. They don't mind going down on their responsibilities in order to ease up some space and get a little bit of flexibility in their work life. I have seen that, people who are like administrators and who are cyber tech SMEs are now like, hey, just give me an admin job, a network administrator position in your office. I'm happy. It's okay if the pay is less. So that is how it has come down to. But again, we do not have as much of the work culture. It also, see, the work culture is not about just the surrounding or the environment that they are in. It is also about the leadership and what is the what is it that they are driving, right? How the company is driven by the leadership. That means a lot, and that sets an example. So even if they are at the military, just as our employer, we need to understand how to keep them motivated.
Yeah. That's kind of our next section, and we're going to transition to. But before I go there, we got a couple questions. I'm going to Maria, thanks for your question. Question is, how can smaller businesses compete with larger companies when it comes down to benefits and overall compensation packages? And Maria, rather than ask Anu and Zach to answer this question, I want to invite you, join our next HR at the Table on the 17th of January. We're going to be talking about David versus Goliath, where we're interviewing Chief Talent Officer of Stanley Black & Decker, former CHRO of Amazon Web Services, and he's going to tell us how to compete with the big guys. So I think he would be the most appropriate to answer that question. Maria, good question. Thank you. Another question from Courtney. And, this is an interesting question before we transition related to COVID. And I'll just put it out there and figure out if it's a Zach question or a new question. Have you received questions on COVID mandates and prospective candidates? So when you're having candidates come to, apply as a recruiting, are you seeing people asking about the mandates the government has placed?
I think that's a new question, then I can punctuate it if needed.
Yeah, we thankfully now I think Indeed the other day I was trying to put a job up there, and Indeed now has one of those mandate questions. They have this COVID vaccination as part of their mandate questions, yes or no question. So we didn't have to spell it out; the system had it. So it just does not come under EEO, or we will not be filed. The company will not come into red light. However, yes, especially now with the federal mandate for all military personnel, the vaccine mandate on all the federal government employees, we are having a lot of issues. People are quitting the job, and until we have further directions on what is the recommendations for non-vaccinated people, I think we are going to continue seeing resignations within the organization. And as a small company, we are facing that.
Yeah. Zach, how's that impact the smaller employers? I know Verified First is 120-ish employees.
It's definitely been fun. It's kind of, it's been like a choose your own adventure. Is like each week they announce a different part of, the legislation. When it first came out, it was any employers with more than 100, I think, and it was unclear if it applied to remote employees. We found out later that I think most recently it does not apply to remote employees, but now there's this twist of if they're in the office, they have to either provide a negative test or be vaccinated. Our current county that we're headquartered in fits the CDC guidelines of highly transmittable, and so masks indoors are recommended. That's changed in the last 6 months. We get questions on it 25% of the time maybe, and we just let them know here's what we do. We try to take it serious and make sure everybody's healthy. A lot of people are more comfortable working from home, which is great. We don't currently mandate it, but we are tracking it because anticipating if it gets passed and whatnot, then we want to make sure that we're not, scrambling to get all the information then. So we don't pry if somebody, doesn't want to provide their vaccination status. We just mark that we're unable to provide proof that they're vaccinated. There's kind of two columns we put people in from a record point of view and keep it as is. So
yeah, definitely a different world, that's for sure. In my family anyway, it's caused all kinds of conversations. I got a very interesting daughter. So anyway, well, I want to transition a bit and talk a little bit about how we can tackle challenges that are facing talent acquisition. I know we only got like 15 minutes left, so I wished I had a whole nother hour and a half, and maybe we do a follow-up down the road. But so Anu, Zach, maybe TA and HR professionals, they can start tackling some of these challenges. I know we talked about, remote work's not always an option. Pay is kind of pay and compensation, the package, if you will. Turnaround time is maybe a challenge you're facing. Wellness, what are maybe those two takeaways that if I'm listening to this webinar that, hey, I want to go try something different, that maybe you would recommend to people listening. So let's start with Anu from the government space. If I'm a government recruiter and I'm doing what you're doing, what are maybe something you want to try that maybe just your organization doesn't let you try and you think it's a good idea?
Actually, we haven't left any rabbits in the bag as yet. We've pulled out everything possible to make things work, and I have total support of my management if I want to try something. However, I wish the government had gives us a little more directions towards, how to handle the vaccine mandate. If you were to talk about vaccine mandate, to tell us, okay, if you're working from home, is there a little bit of flexibility and things like that. Two things. I think we're doing everything under the sun to recruit, right? Currently, I have over 30 jobs that I need to fill like yesterday. So we are trying everything. I don't think there's anything that is left unturned.
Yeah. And I assume when you think everything, what are some of the things you are doing? Like you're recruiting from colleges, I would imagine.
Yeah, the go-to places are colleges. Again, we look at alumni, and preferably, bottom line is if they have a security plus certificate and a secret clearance, we are considering you for a position with us. So definitely that is the bottom basic requirement that I need. But besides that, my go-to place for recruiting is the transition offices in all the bases, military bases. I work with, as part of my outreach program, I work with quite many organizations like Hiring Our Heroes and MSAP, and there are plenty of places where military personnel register for jobs. So I go and seek people there. I work on different job portals that's very very focused on military personnel. So I mean, cleared people, so to speak, non-military personnel, but cleared people. So those are my go-to jobs. And then the things that we do in the company, one is my selling point for EPS is that we are a very small company. We are, everyone knows everyone here. Our CEO is hands-on. She actually makes it a point to talk to every employee in the company. She knows everything, the background of every individual and so on. She makes it a point to know them, which is it is like, open door policy. You can go and talk to anyone in the office. We provide, we help in career advancement. So the company pays for any of your certifications or your school if you want to upgrade your skills. Those are some things that most of the companies are doing it, I would think. But being a smaller company, I think this is my pitch, is that, hey, we offer you all this. I will work with you to build your career. So join my company, and I'll take you under my belt. So.
Anything to add, Zach, of some creative ways we can help recruiters overcome the challenges they're faced?
Yeah,
I think at a university, right?
Yeah, so I do teach there, but we also go to the job fairs, both that the universities put on, but also local job specs here in town. I think kind of what Anu was saying, it's about your knowing your value proposition. We're not going to necessarily compete with the largest organizations that have all the bells and whistles. Like we have a pretty sweet break room, but it's not super occupied right now, understandably so. What we offer, regardless of where you work, though, is you have access to some of the best leadership around, and people that genuinely care about you. And I just give them the personal story in interviews of my own. I've never been bored here. I always feel like I'm plugged in. It's probably one of the most difficult jobs I've ever had, but it's also the happiest I've been professionally, which is why I'm still here. It's not that there's hard days. It's just that I'm supported during those hard days, and the days that are nice, the ones that make it worth everything, is because of the people around you that you're trusted to do the job you're hired to do. And Ben, I think that kind of plays back to what you were saying earlier, but after 2020, people were, okay, maybe this is going to end 2021, and now we're ending into, the second year of this. I think people are lonely. I think burnout's part of it, but I think being lonely and feeling alone is part of it too. So that's something that we try to do. If you want to come to the office, come to the office. I'm in the office right now. I have a home office, but I prefer being in the office. I like seeing other people, right? If you don't come to the office, that's fine. We're still going to bug you. We're gonna reach out to you. We're gonna ask you for we're doing a spirit week right now, and we asked everybody to provide a baby picture. So we're still trying to find those engagement ways to connect. Haven't gotten 100% right, but that's my biggest thing is you're not going to just be a number. You're gonna matter. You're gonna feel less alone and feel supported. So that's what we're here for.
What I'm hearing, Zach, is
personal story goes a long way.
Yeah. What I was hearing, Zach, is HR is going to come Christmas caroling at everyone's door. So I love the idea.
Get a baby picture from you. So
I know. I don't have a baby picture that my mom has digital. So, anyway. Well, so, we got 10 more minutes and, we hadn't really talked about this yet, but I think it's really important. When it comes to compensation packages, we got a lot of questions about compensation and creative ways to put the job out there. It seems like the pandemic is starting to level the national compensation playing field. And what are some steps you're doing to analyze and evaluate where we should be, or where, not we, but your organization, maybe I knew at EPS, what are you guys doing to look at this? Is it flattening the playing field? In Idaho compared to California wages, there's a big difference, a big gap. There's also a big difference in gap in cost of living, which is now changing where I live. House prices doubled in the last year. So just curious, what are you guys doing at EPS and then Zach at Verified First to kind of figure out where we fit in that national, there's no geographic walls now. So how do we get it right? Any strategies?
We are, so our salary scale or the salary range for any position depends on the position and the responsibilities. It is no more on location. Irrespective of whether you are working here in New Jersey or in Florida, it is all going to be the same. So we are not going to base on the other thing is if you work for a defense contracting company and the positions that you dictate, now we win projects based on how we bid. And when you bid for a project and you say that these are the resources and this is our cost, the government, we have to base our cost based on the COLA and the LQA, the cost of living and the living quarters allowance. So irrespective of whether we do it or not, it is already built in. So that the compensation wouldn't matter as far as in our jobs. It is more on the project and where the project is and how much we have bid and what is it that we can afford to give. So that's what it basically comes down to. However, as you rightly said, what I am seeing in the industry today is that a lot of companies are, now your compensation is not going to be like, one size fits all. It is not going to be anything like, okay, we're going to have a uniform scale-wise range. Each person, you will have to tailor to each person's needs because now the workforce comprises of not only, it is of different generations now. You have 3 different generations in the workforce, and the 3 expectations from 3 different generations are different. And if you are going to build a workforce for future, you need to keep this in mind about compensation not being just your base salary plus your bonus plus your benefits, but it is base salary plus bonus plus benefits plus perks, and the perks could be anything, you tailor it along according to the person, who's going to be using it. Recognition and rewards is so important now, more so because people are working remotely, and that again has to be very specific instead of just saying, "Oh no, you did a good job." The companies or the HR is expected to say, "I know you did a good job in this particular case, and hence we recognize you for this position, for your achievement." So being very specific has become very important. So people are now being, I don't know, maybe because they are all alone, as Zach mentioned, they're becoming very sensitive. So the more, you have to work with the psychology of every individual.
Yeah, it's really, really important that I like the idea of listening to employees. I think Zach and his team at Verified First listen really well. we had a webinar earlier, I think last week, with Hi Bob and Donut, a couple of our partners at Verified First, and they brought up an interesting thing. Some employees, they're telling their employers they need things like, pay for my tuition. Instead of me paying back my federal loans, maybe the employer takes that up. The different things and different strategies and getting creative at how to take care of your people. And I thought that was really interesting. I think it's really important that we listen to the team, listen to the staff, and obviously listen to the candidates.
Yeah, now the benefits package now include pet insurance and adult care leave, and you have your personal leave, and then you have your children's leave, mental health day, and there's so many different days and that you'll have to incorporate, but you got to be very creative on how you want to implement it though.
Yeah, awesome. Anything to add, Zach?
No, ultimately know your audience, know the people that are on your team. If you're 70% millennial, 401k might not be as important as flexibility or newest technology. We have a compensation resource that it's not crowdsourced like a Glassdoor or whatnot. It's a pretty comprehensive plan that we are allowed to kind of narrow down. Okay, an employer or a position of this caliber, this similar title with employer of our size, and we can also include geographic location if we want. And then around there, you can kind of build a salary range. And then the second part of that is having those conversations with the employees, so that they know where they're at and they know the plan. So they can kind of, they don't think it's just going to be a 3% raise every year if that's not the case. So,
yeah, definitely got to get creative. Well, I want to just transition a bit, and we've been doing a year-long survey. This is episode 12, so we're going to launch a poll for our audience here. This is the 12th time we launched this poll, and then in 2022, we'll be publishing the 2022 ATS Applicant Tracking System Buyer's Guide. Correction, it's called the Talent Acquisition Buyer's Guide. And so this is related to that guide. Take a moment, I'm gonna pop the poll up on the screen. And as people are participating in the poll, Anu and Zach, maybe you've seen these questions before somewhere, maybe you haven't. We'll give it just a second, should be loading here. There we go. So if you're in our audience, take a moment, go vote. What areas are you looking to replace within the next year? And some of these are, obviously applicant tracking system, CRM. Applicant tracking system might include your HCM platform, HRIS, background screening, assessments, and as people vote here, there's a question that came in from Portia from Michigan. So Portia, hopefully you're voting, and thanks for your question. And Zach, I'm gonna throw this one to you.
Sure.
So she's getting some experienced pushback from the hiring managers that want to do in-person testing for a position working remote. Any suggestions or tips or help to get her hiring managers on board with doing everything remote? Any ideas?
I have to know a little more about what the testing is. We had similar pushback for a while where, like, I think it was our finance team, and they wanted to do kind of a shadow thing where they, essentially watched how good somebody was at Excel, which just sounds like an awful way to spend a day. But it was for a remote position, and so we just kind of eventually got to the point where, what are we looking at? You're trying to assess, again, the results, the output, so have a test built around it, and then you can, if you want to interact with them and coach them, we all have webcams, we all have laptops, open up a Google Hangout room, and that's where we're at. So, politely, but maybe challenge the why behind it, and potentially poke holes in the logic. Maybe it's just to see their interaction, but then call that out. And I want to see I want to see their body language. I want to meet them in person. But it is kind of a bit of a fake out, right? If you're testing in person, but allowing remote without a valid reason. So just be cautious of that.
Hopefully that helps with your question portion. There's so many other good questions. I just wish we had more time to go through them all. But again, Anu and Zach, thanks for coming today. recruiters have a ton of challenges. You know, a big thank out for hopefully this engaging, challenging educational discussion. There's a bunch of creative ideas out there. Hopefully everyone connected can join the HR at the Table series and listen in. I want to thank our sponsor, NeoGov. And again, very thankful for Verified First to bring these episodes, HR at the Table, to hopefully provide some educational information. So stick around just a few moments. We'll wrap up. But Anu and Zach, before we do that, any last comments? Anything that you wanted to say that we didn't get to ask? Other than I'm awesome. Kidding.
You're fantastic, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I really hope I was able to answer all your questions, but it was fantastic. I really had a good time. Thank you so much. Thanks, Zach, for the ride, and I look forward to more webinars with you guys. Thank you.
Awesome, Anu. Thank you so much. Zach, any last remarks?
Yeah, just you know, HR professionals and human in general, right? Let's take care of each other. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Do a pulse check if you haven't, you know, gone to the doctor, haven't gone to talk to a counselor or anything like that. Kick the tires. Make sure that you're listening to yourself, and you're doing things to kind of lift you up. It's probably one of the most challenging times in our lives, in our careers. But we're also kind of the center spoke of a lot of these things. So it's important that we keep it together and stick together, and when we can't, you know, find the resources and ask for help. So really important.
I really appreciate that, Zach. And you know, it's really interesting. We started HR at the Table because we did these coffee hours. Everyone was scrambling to figure out what to do when COVID hit early 2020. And then, you know, about 6 months into that, I'm like, well, everyone's listening to everyone. And we came up with the idea of HR at the Table. I think HR has a voice at the executive table like never before. Now's the time to use a voice to make effective change. And I think, again, to your point, Zach, you guys have come together as a community, talent acquisition, HR together, and really solve some tough challenges. So Zach, thank you for what you do for us at Verified First, and for all of you listening, thank you for what you do for your organizations. And we'll see you in our next HR at the Table. Stick around. I think we can earn Sherman HRCA credits, so we'll kick that over to our, I think we've called it Voice in the Wind for a while.
Well, that about wraps it up for today's discussion. I want to thank everyone for your attendance today, as it is always important to learn about these different aspects. I'd also like to give a big thank you to our host, Ben, Anu, and Zach for having this great and relevant discussion. We'd love to hear what you thought about our webinar today, so make sure to leave us some feedback on our post-webinar survey. For our live attendees today, stick around just a little bit longer for our post-webinar survey to redeem 1 SHRM and 1 HRCI credit. For any on-demand listeners, check your email for instructions on how to redeem your credit. We'll be sending out the webinar on demand in case any of you want to use this for reference or send it to some colleagues. Also, stay tuned for more HR at the Table webinars and for blogs deep diving into today's topic. Next, we'll be hosting the Chief Talent Officer at Stanley Black & Decker on the War for Talent, David versus Goliath. We hope you can make it, and we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Anu, Zach, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thanks.